An exotic type of diamond may have come to Earth from outer space, scientists say. Called carbonado or black diamonds, the mysterious stones are found in Brazil and the Central African Republic. They are unusual for being the color of charcoal and full of frothy bubbles. The diamonds, which can weigh at more than 3,600 carats, can also have a face that looks like melted glass. Because of their odd appearance, the diamonds are unsuitable as gemstones. But they do have industrial applications, and were used in the drill bits that helped dig the Panama Canal. Now a team led by Stephen Haggerty of Florida International University in Miami has presented a new study suggesting that the odd stones were brought to Earth by an asteroid billions of years ago.
The findings were published online in the journal Astrophysical Journal Letters on December 20. The scientists exposed polished pieces of carbonado to extremely intense infrared light. The test revealed the presence of many hydrogen-carbon bonds, indicating that the diamonds probably formed in a hydrogen-rich environment, such as that found in space. The diamonds also showed strong similarities to tiny nanodiamonds, which are frequently found in meteorites. They're not identical, Haggerty said, but they're very similar. Astrophysicists, he added, have developed theories predicting that nanodiamonds form easily in the titanic stellar explosions called supernovas, which scatter debris through interstellar space. The deposits in the Central African Republic and Brazil, he said, probably come from the impact of diamond-rich asteroid billions of years ago, when South America and Africa were joined. Richard Morris, of the School of Accounting at the University of NSW, which requires an entrance score in the top 5% of students, says attendance has been a problem since the late 1990s. Sometimes in the lecture we've only got about 1/3 of students enrolled attending, he said. It definitely is a problem. If you don't turn up to class, you're missing out on the whole richness of the experience. You don't think a whole lot, you don't engage in debates with other students or with your teachers. It is not all gloom, said Professor John Dern, a pro-vice-chancellor at the University of Canberra, who said the internet was transforming the way students access and use information. It is strange that despite all the evidence as to their ineffectiveness, traditional lectures seem to persist in our universities.
Fancy locusts for lunch? Probably not, if you live in the West, but elsewhere it's a different story. Edible insects, termites, stick insects, dragonflies, grasshoppers and giant water bugs are on the menu for an estimated 80% of the world's population. More than 1,000 species of insects are served up around the world. For example, kungu cakes, made from midges, are a delicacy in parts of Africa. Mexico is an insect-eating, or entomophagous, hotspot, where more than 200 insect species are consumed. Demand is so high that 40 species are now under threat, including white agave worms. These caterpillars of the tequila giant skipper butterfly fetch around $250 a kilogram. Eating insects makes nutritional sense. Some contain more protein than meat or fish. The female gypsy moth, for instance, is about 80% protein. Insects can be a good source of vitamins and minerals too. A type of caterpillar, used to terpsichore, eaten in Angola, is rich in iron, zinc and thiamine. What do they taste like? Ants have a lemon tang, apparently, whereas giant water bugs taste of mint and fire ant pupae of watermelon. You have probably, inadvertently, already tasted some of these things, as insects are often accidental tourists in other types of food. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration even issues guidelines for the number of insect parts allowed in certain foods. For example, it is acceptable for 225 grams of macaroni to contain up to 225 insect fragments. Federal Education Minister Julie Bishop says she has seen no evidence that foreign students are graduating from Australian universities with poor English skills. Research by Monash University academic Bob Burrell has found a third of foreign students are graduating without a competent level of English. But Ms. Bishop says Australian universities only enroll foreign students once they have achieved international standards of language proficiency. This has been an extraordinary attack by Professor Burrell on our universities, she said. International students must meet international benchmarks in English language in order to get a place at a university in Australia, and they can't get into university without reaching that international standard. University of Canberra Vice-Chancellor Roger Dean also says international students are required to sit an English test before being admitted to nearly all Australian universities. There are, of course, intercultural difficulties as well as language difficulties, he said. There are, of course, also many Australian students who don't speak such fantastically good English either. So we're trying to push the standard even higher than present, but it's a very useful one already. Ms. Bishop says Australia's university system has high standards. I've seen no evidence to suggest that students are not able to complete their courses because they're failing in English, yet they're being passed by the universities, she said. I've not seen any evidence to back that up. Drive down any highway, and you'll see a proliferation of chain restaurants. Most likely, if you travel long and far enough, you'll see McDonald's Golden Arches as well as signs for Burger King, Hardee's, and Wendy's, the Big Four of burgers. Despite its name, though, Burger King has fallen short of claiming the burger crown, unable to surpass market leader McDonald's #1 sales status. Always the bridesmaid and never the bride, Burger King remains #2. Worse yet, Burger King has experienced a 6-year 22% decline in customer traffic, with its overall quality rating dropping while ratings for the other three contenders have increased. The decline has been attributed to inconsistent product quality and poor customer service. Although the chain tends to throw advertising dollars at the problem, an understanding of integrated marketing communication theory would suggest that internal management problems need to be rectified before a unified, long-term strategy can be put in place. The importance of consistency in brand image and messages, at all levels of communication, has become a basic tenet of IMC theory and practice. The person who takes the customer's order must communicate the same message as Burger King's famous tagline, "Have it your way," or the customer will just buzz up the highway to a chain restaurant that seems more consistent and, therefore, more reliable. It is the assertion of this article that students who use visual art as a pre-writing stimulus are composing their ideas both in images and in words. The result of the art creation process allows students the distance to elaborate, add details, and create more coherent text. The process of writing is more than putting words on a piece of paper. Effective authors are able to create imagery and to communicate ideas using well-chosen words, phrases, and text structures. Emergent writers struggle with the mechanics of the writing process, i.e. fine motor control for printing legibly, recall of spelling patterns, and the use of syntax and grammar rules. As a result, texts written by young writers are simplistic and formulaic. The artwork facilitates the writing process, resulting in a text that is richer in sensory detail and more intricate than the more traditional writing first, crayon drawing second approach. The first section of the book covers new modes of assessment. In Chapter 1, Kimball, Goldsmith College, London, responds to criticisms of design programs as formalistic and conventional, stating that a focus on risk-taking rather than hard work in design innovation is equally problematic. His research contains 3 parts that include preliminary exploration of design innovation qualities, investigation of resulting classroom practices, and development of evidence-based assessment. The assessment he describes is presented in the form of a structured worksheet, which includes a collaborative element and digital photographs, in story format. Such a device encourages stimulating ideas, but does not recognize students as design innovators. The assessment sheet includes holistic impressions as well as details about having, growing, and proving ideas.
Colloquial judgments are evident in terms such as wow and yawn, and reward the quality and quantity of ideas with the term sparkiness, which fittingly is a pun as the model project was to design light bulb packaging. In addition, the assessment focuses on the process of optimizing or complexity control as well as proving ideas with thoughtful criticism and not just generation of novel ideas. The definitions for qualities such as technical and aesthetic pertaining to users are too narrow and ill-defined. The author provides examples of the project, its features and structures, students' notes and judgments, and their sketches and photographs of finished light bulb packages in the appendix.
The practice of giving storms personal names appears to have originated with Clement Wragg, an Australian meteorologist who in the 1890s entertained himself by naming storms after women, mythical figures, and politicians that he didn't like. The modern system of using personal names developed during World War II, when meteorologists began using women's names, often those of wives or girlfriends, instead of cumbersome designations based on latitude and longitude. Short and quickly understood, names were easier to transmit over the radio and easier to keep straight if there was more than one storm in a given area. The system was formalized in 1953 when the National Weather Service put together an alphabetical list of female names to be used for storms in the Atlantic Basin.
In reality, however, the causes of truancy and non-attendance are diverse and multifaceted. There are as many triggers of non-attendance as there are non-attenders. Each child has her own unique story, and whilst there may often be certain identifiable factors in common, each non-attending child demands and deserves an individual response, tailored to meet her individual needs. This applies equally to the 14-year-old who fails to attend school because a parent is terminally ill, the overweight 11-year-old who fails to attend because he is embarrassed about changing for PE in front of peers, the 15-year-old who is bored by lessons, and to the 7-year-old who is teased in the playground because she doesn't wear the latest designer label clothes.
A team in the University of London found that people who went with their initial response on a test of visual perception, questions included picking out an anomaly and a pattern of symbols, did better than those who were given more time to ponder. Whereas the subconscious brain recognized a rotated version of the same symbol as different, the conscious brain reasoned that an apple is still an apple whether rotated or not, the researchers on the project concluded. When the subjects had time to engage their higher-level functions instead of relying on their intuitive responses, they were more likely to be wrong.
Imagine a time in the not-too-distant future when your power comes from a seamless mix of renewable energy and traditional sources. It is delivered by a grid that manages thousands of windmills and hundreds of thousands of customers. Computer-controlled, the grid is able to manage instant variations in supply and demand and provides a real-time power balance. Far more complex than anything in existence today, it is called a smart grid. This technology is a new frontier in power supply and seen as a green solution to current outdated management systems. When introduced, smart grids will result in energy savings and will allow consumers a choice in their electricity charges and to be able to select the cheapest time slots. Once an organization has its product to sell, it must then determine the appropriate price to sell it at. The price is set by balancing many factors including supply and demand, cost, desired profit, competition, perceived value, and market behavior. Ultimately, the final price is determined by what the market is willing to exchange for the product. Pricing theory can be quite complex because so many factors influence what the purchaser decides is a fair value. It also should be noted that, in addition to monetary exchange, price can be the exchange of goods or services as in a barter agreement, or an exchange of specific behavior, such as a vote in a political campaign. The difficulty for the energy industry is that smart grids do not exist in reality and the power companies cannot experiment with existing supplies.
Umami was first identified in Japan, in 1908, when Dr. Kikanai Ikeda concluded that kombu, a type of edible seaweed, had a different taste than most foods. He conducted experiments that found that the high concentration of glutamate in kombu was what made it so tasty. From there, he crystallized monosodium glutamate, MSG, the seasoning that would become popular the world over. Decades later, umami became scientifically defined as one of the 5 individual tastes sensed by receptors on the tongue. Then in 1996, a team of University of Miami researchers studying taste perception made another breakthrough. For an authentic approach, researchers built various types of equipment failures into the grid to test the system. And it works.
I'm 43 years old and I owe tens of thousands of dollars in student loans. Oh sure, I knew the loans were piling up as I went through school. But with one loan coming from here, another from there, I had no idea of the rockslide that was building. 15 years later, I still experience moments of sheer horror regarding my family's financial situation. My monthly student loan payment is more than triple my car payment. Okay, so without my college degree, I would not have been able to get my current job. For that, I'm grateful, but at what cost? My loans have been accruing at a rate of 10%, and now they have burgeoned to, well, I am English major, you do the math. I don't think they'll ever get paid off. We're in debt way past our eyeballs, and there's no hope in sight. I'm being kept in class, a financial class of graduates whose only hope for attending college meant borrowing money from the government.
Because of our mounting credit card debt and monthly payments that far exceed our family's incomes, and my kids will also join the class of citizens who can't rely on their parents for college support. Do I wish I'd chosen another educational route? You bet. Perhaps trade school. I've thought that being a plumber might not be such a bad gig. But if your job aspirations require a 4-year degree, take my advice and choose a college you can afford, both during and after graduation. Take a realistic look at your anticipated income, and factor in priorities that don't carry a price, like the spouse and children you might want to have someday. I was overconfident that my student loan debt would pale in comparison to the lucrative writing career I'd enjoy after graduation. Now I'm paying for that decision in more ways than I'd ever imagined.
Under appropriate conditions, why you sound receptors. You've got sound receptors in your ear. And they are beautiful. We're not going to talk about them in any length, but there's a little flappy, these little spiky things coming along in your ear, and they can translate vibrational energy coming from your eardrum being translated into a vibration in the fluid in your ear, into a physical motion of these little receptors there, into an electrical motion, into the electrical signal that goes into your ear. So all of that. Oh, that's pretty impressive stuff. We're not going to talk about the details of it, but I invite some of you want to learn more about this particular MIT students, I think, find receptors to be really quite remarkable kinds of devices.
I have been writing non-fiction for years, and secretly wanting to be a novelist. When I first started writing at the age of 30, it was with the intention of writing fiction, but I took a little detour for 10 or 12 years, and write non-fiction, which I absolutely have no regret about at all. I think it's exactly the right thing for me to do. But there's this dream tucked away inside of me to do this. Now I was remembering reading something that wrote, who is a great novelist from Mississippi, who had a big influence on me actually. She said, No art ever came out of not risking your neck. And I think she's absolutely right. It felt that way to me at the time. It actually feels that way every time I sit down to write something.
Sea creatures are inspiring the latest devices that harness wave power. This one, called the Oyster, sits on the seafloor and opens and closes as waves pass over it. Cables attach it to generators on the shore. Since the November 2009, it's been powering 9,000 homes in the Orkney Islands. Another device looks like a snake. The Anaconda is made from a rubber tube filled with water that floats just below the surface. When the swell hits the front of it, the tube squeezed above ripples down its links and powers a turbine in its tail. Prototypes are currently being tested, but the full-scale version will be 200 meters long. This system also looks like a snake. But this one is made of steel. It floats near the surface, where waves make its joints move. This drives hydraulic systems that power electrical generators, like the Anaconda.
This is Hans Krebs, who in 1937 published a paper showing the sequence of chemical reactions by which energy is released in individual cells. It is called the Krebs cycle, which some of you may remember from your chemistry course in your high school. Krebs is a wonderful example, to me, of how a scientist who is determined can overcome all kinds of human obstacles. Krebs's father constantly discouraged him and told him that he had just mediocre intelligence and was never to anything important in his life, as a teenager. What Krebs remembers in his memoir, his father said to him, "You can't make a silk purse at a sow's ear." Not the same quote, but that he had only mediocre ability and would never be a great scientist. Language death is not mainstream theater. It is not mainstream anything. Can you imagine Hollywood taking it on? It is so far outside the mindsets of most people that they have difficulty appreciating what the crisis is all about, because they are not used to thinking more about language as an issue in itself. Somehow we need to change these mindsets. We need to get people thinking about language more explicitly, more intimately, more enthusiastically. Interest in language is certainly there. In the general population, most people are fascinated by such topics as where words come from, or what the origin of their town's name is, or whether their baby's name means anything. They are certainly prepared to play Scrabble and a host of other language games ad infinitum, and language games are often found on radio and television, too, but a willingness to focus that interest on general issues.
Normally, however, spectacles are part of an assemblage of items, giving us an overall look. In fashion terms, they are classed as accessories along with shoes, jewelry, handbags or watches. But in healthcare terms, they are of course a medical device. And in many languages other than English, they are often described as a prosthesis, an artificial part of the body, part of you, making you who you are. Choosing your spectacles is therefore a major decision. Increasingly people own 2 or more pairs for different occasions or times of the day. There is a phrase for this in the industry. It's called lifestyle dispensing, and it dates back to the 1950s. The idea is that you wear one type of spectacles in the workplace and quite another at leisure or on the beach.
Today I want to talk about water and the law that surrounds drinking water, to talk about its quality, talk about what your rights are to clean water, to also give you a sense of what key threats are to drinking water, what your exposure might be, and what we might to do about it, both legally but also personally. Water is a critical component of our environment and our bodies. Your body is close to 70% water. You can go for several weeks, 2 or 3 on average without food. You can only go for about 4 minutes without air. And you can go for maybe 4 or 5 days without water before you die. So water is absolutely critical. And one of the key arguments I want to make today is that it's a largely neglected area of environmental law given the rapid increase in our knowledge about chemical threats to water quality and where those threats come from.
Students at the University of Leicester have recently whizzed up a storm of eco-friendly smoothies. This comes as part of a week of events aimed at promoting environmental initiatives on campus. A range of events and activities were organized by the university environment team and the Students' Union to encourage students to waste less, recycle more, travel sustainably and save energy to contribute to the university's target of cutting its carbon footprint by 60% by the year 2020. The highlight of the week was a cycle-powered smoothie maker. Students rescued fruit from Leicester Market which would otherwise have been thrown away and salvaged it to create delicious smoothies. No electricity was used as the fruit was whizzed up in a blender attached to the back of a bike pedaled by enthusiastic student volunteers.